Good morning. It's Friday, the 13th of December. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here at ARIRANG's news centre in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Jang Song-thaek, the long-time second-in-command and uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, has been executed for being a traitor. The execution took place on Thursday, immediately after a special military trial. South Korea's spy agency, embroiled in an election scandal, lays out measures to prevent its agents from intervening in politics. The ruling and opposition parties react differently. Plus, Korea signs a landmark deal with Iraq to export 24 supersonic light fighter jets before 2017, as well as pilot training and operational support. The $2 billion agreement is Korea's biggest defense export deal to date. Let's start with the huge news out of North Korea. Jang Song-thaek has been executed following a short military trial that found him guilty of treason. Jang, who was stripped of power just a few days ago, was accused of forming a faction against the state and harbouring his own political ambitions. Ji Myung-gil reports.
The North Korean Central News Agency reported early Friday that the uncle of leader Kim Jong-un had been executed. Jang Song-thaek, long considered as the country's second most powerful man and Kim Jong-un's former mentor, was sentenced to death for being a traitor who had tried to overthrow the state. Jang was executed after admitting to his crimes before a military tribunal on Thursday, the North said in a statement released by its state-run news agency. The execution comes just a matter of days after Jang was dramatically removed from a Workers' Party session by armed guards. Some experts see the purge and subsequent execution as a sign of the young leader's growing confidence, but there are also worries the sudden removal of such an important part of the North government, seen by outsiders as the leading supporter of Chinese-style economic reforms, could create dangerous instability or lead to a miscalculation or an attack on South Korea. Jang's removal marks the most significant shakeup in 2 years under Kim's leadership and suggests the North's young leader is willing to go after his rivals publicly, and in ways more secretive than his father Kim Jong-il ever did. The North has never so explicitly described the crimes or the punishment of a high-level official before now. Pyongyang labeled Jang a traitor to the nation and worse than a dog in its report. Jang was married to Kim Jong-un's aunt, Kim Kyung-hee, the young sister of late leader Kim Jong-il. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
And staying with that story, the South Korean Presidential Office held an emergency security meeting on this Friday morning in response to the news of Jang's execution, and we'll bring you more details on that as we get them. Now, in other news, South Korea's spy agency has presented a set of self-reform measures aimed at stopping agents from getting involved in political affairs. The reform plans are in response to accusations that agents meddled in last year's presidential election. Kim Hyun-ji reports.
National Intelligence Service Chief Nam Jae-jun on Thursday presented his agency's plan to reform itself to lawmakers. The spy agency stands accused of launching an online smear campaign targeting opposition candidates in the run-up to last year's presidential election. The reform proposal submitted by the NIS would scrap a system that gives NIS agents unbridled access to the National Assembly, political parties, and media outlets. The plan also includes setting up a center that will handle employee complaints of unjust or inappropriate orders from superiors that could force them to intervene in politics. Whether the complaints are legitimate would be determined by a special panel that would be led by 2 prosecutors dispatched from outside the agency. Under the plan, all NIS agents and new recruits would be required to take an oath to not intervene in politics during their tenure. The proposal also calls for the establishment of codes that clearly define the scope of its psychological warfare campaign against North Korea. The ruling party has given out a rather positive review of the spy agency's proposal, saying that it presents a clear guideline to keep agents from intervening in politics.
The reform proposal shows the spy agency's endeavors to overhaul itself. My party will work with the opposition party to complement that proposal.
However, the main opposition party criticized the plan, saying that it does not discuss core issues, such as toughening the parliament's control over the agency's budget.
The NIS chief said no intelligence agencies of advanced nations disclose their budgets, but my party lawmakers don't believe that's correct. We need to fact-check and further discuss the issue.
Next week, the committee will hold public hearings to gather experts' views on how to reform the spy agency. And then it will start deliberations on how the NIS law and the law on public officials should be revised in order to carry out the necessary reforms. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
Turning now to the latest on the relocation of government ministries and agencies to Korea's new administrative city of Sejong. The second phase of that movement begins on this Friday, and our Park Ji-won tells us how the process is coming along.
The Korean government's relocation to the multifunctional administrative city of Sejong enters its second phase starting this Friday. Over the next 2 weeks, 16 government ministries and sub-agencies will move to Korea's new complex in Sejong, some 120 kilometers south of Seoul. The agencies relocating during the second phase include the Education, Culture and Trade ministries and their sub-organizations. They are scheduled to complete their moves by the end of December. 14 other ministries, state agencies and their sub-organizations, such as the Prime Minister's Office and the Finance and Environment Ministries, already moved to Sejong late last year.
When the second phase of the government relocation plan is completed at the end of the month, there will be some 10,000 public officials working at this government complex in Sejong.
The administrative center, located a 2-hour drive away from Seoul, aims to lessen the focus on the nation's capital and to achieve balanced regional development. Despite the controversy about increased inefficiency within the government, the administrative city was launched with the passing of 2 related special acts at the National Assembly in 2010. The city is now bustling with constant construction to build apartments, schools, hospitals, and other facilities for the incoming population. And the city's first state cultural institution, the National Library of Korea, Sejong, opened on Thursday afternoon. The library is not only Korea's first specializing in government policy archives and related documents. It is also expected to offer an important cultural venue for the citizens of this newly blossoming city. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News, Sejong.
The Korean government has sealed a record-breaking export agreement worth more than $2 billion with Iraq. Seoul will send 24 supersonic light fighter jets, making inroads into the lucrative Middle East arms market. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Hyundai reports.
Korea Aerospace Industries signed a landmark export contract with Iraq on Thursday. The aerospace agency will provide 24 units of the T-50IQ multi-role light attack aircrafts to the Middle Eastern country by 2017 for $1.1 billion. The package deal includes pilot training and other operational support, making the total value of the deal worth more than $2 billion. It's the most expensive single defense export deal Korea has ever seen. The T-50IQ, built by Korea Aerospace Industries, is a supersonic light fighter that can also be used as an advanced trainer jet. With an engine output of more than 8,000 kilograms and a top speed of Mach 1.5, it can load more than 4,500 kilograms of armed gear. The biggest strengths of the T-50IQ, officials say, is that it's one of the world's most advanced trainers, suitable for fifth-generation fighter jets. Plus, it can carry the latest weapons, such as AIM-9 air-to-air missiles, AGM-65 air-to-surface missiles, and JDAM guided bombs. Kai officials say there's rising global demand for light fighters to replace aging fighter jets, and that the T-50 is emerging as an attractive option because of its competitive price range. Officials aim to sell more than 1,000 units with a target to increase its global market share to up to 30%. 1 unit of the T50 has the same economic effect as selling 1,000 units of mid-sized automobiles. The contract with Iraq has shed a new light on Korea's defense industry, demonstrating a potential to become a new growth engine for the nation. 한다은 ARIRANG News.
The interim Prime Minister of the Syrian National Coalition, the leading opposition group in Syria, says he has received intelligence that North Korea may be supplying military experts to the government of Bashar al-Assad. In an interview with Seoul-based Yonhap news agency on Thursday, Ahmad Tomei said there was lots of speculation, but he had not actually seen for himself that Pyongyang was sending experts to help the Syrian government. Tomei said he presumed Russian or North Korean airmen might be directly involved, as the precision of the Syrian government's bombing raids on rebel positions has improved significantly over the past few months. This assumption comes as Russia and North Korea use the same weapons and same bombers. The United Nations says it has evidence of probable chemical weapons use in Syria in 5 out of the 7 attacks investigated. In a report that was presented to the UN Secretary-General on Thursday, Chief UN investigator Åke Sellström said that in several attacks, investigators could not establish direct links between the attack, the site and the victims. The report said there was clear and convincing evidence that deadly nerve gas sarin was used against civilians, including children, in an attack near Damascus in August, which killed hundreds. The 2.5-year civil war in Syria has killed over 100,000 people. The White House's bid for Congress to hold off on new sanctions over Iran's nuclear program has won the key backing of the chairman of the U.S. Senate Banking Committee. Senator Tim Johnson says he agrees with the Obama administration that such an action could rattle delicate negotiations seeking to curb Iran's nuclear program. He said the U.S. should make sure that if the talks fail, it was Iran that caused their failure. Johnson stressed that Washington should not give Iran or other nations a pretext to lay responsibility for their collapse on the US. Earlier this week, Iran's foreign minister said new sanctions would kill the interim nuclear agreement reached in Geneva late last month. The European Union's top foreign policy official says Ukraine still intends to sign an association pact with the EU. Catherine Ashton says Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych assured her earlier this week that he wants to seal a deal which will allow closer ties with the EU. Ukraine has been in turmoil for weeks now after Yanukovych decided to postpone a free trade agreement with the EU in favour of closer economic ties with Moscow. A delegation from Kiev has left for Brussels to resume dialogue with the 28-member regional bloc. Over in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the door was always open for Ukraine to integrate its economy more closely with Russia. Putin has been trying for years to persuade Ukraine to join a Moscow-led customs union, whose membership so far includes Russia, Kazakhstan and Belarus. Natural disasters in recent years have left countries like the Philippines and Japan scrambling for energy sources. Now, a new project launched by Korea's Hyundai Heavy Industries and 2 local energy companies could deliver energy to the most remote places in times of need. Yulian explains.
Hyundai Heavy Industries, the world's biggest shipbuilder, has embarked on a project that could provide a quick solution for natural disaster-stricken areas suffering from power outages. Hyundai, along with Siemens Energy Solutions and 2 local companies, signed an MOU this week to start building what's called a mobile power ship by 2017. It is essentially a floating power plant that could both deliver and produce energy where it's needed. These power-generating ships store and burn liquefied natural gas, one of the fastest-growing sources of energy, to generate electricity of up to 880 megawatts. That's equivalent to the capacity of a nuclear power plant and enough to support 1 million users. Apart from providing relief to areas hit by earthquakes or other natural disasters, it could also serve as a solution to Korea's power shortage problem. Last winter, the government considered borrowing a power ship from Turkey when high energy use in the country sparked concerns about a possible power shortage. Turkey had developed similar power ships back in 2010 to reduce the damage from earthquakes that frequently strike the country. Now, depending on the new ship's performance, the shipbuilders say they could also be exported to countries like the Philippines and Indonesia, where chronic power shortages are rising as a serious concern. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
The Korean government wants to help millions of part-time workers in the nation by making sure they are fairly paid and have the right to work flexible schedules. The government hopes its plan will help boost the employment rate. Kim Jong-un reports.
Nam Seoyeon is back at work after having left her job 5 years ago to focus on raising her 2 children. She's a counselor at a call center and also works at a local consulting company. She says that she only has to work for 4 hours a day, which makes it easier for her to balance work and family life.
I'm making the most of the hours when my children are in daycare.
Nam is one of the 2 million Korean women who have been given up full-time jobs to take care of their family. She's now been hired as a time-selective employee on a permanent contract and is entitled to the same wages and benefits as her salaried counterparts. But workers like Nam work for just 4 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, which is just about half the time of most full-time employees who put in more than 9 hours a day. The rate of pay that time-selective employees receive is higher than that of ordinary part-time workers, since it's proportional to what they would make if they were on a full-time contract. The Ministry of Employment and Labor says the plan will bring flexibility to the labor market and says the government will increase the number of time-selected positions to 930,000 to boost the nation's employment from its current 64% to 70% by 2017. But not everyone is on board with the plan. In the case of prospective workers in their 20s who just graduated from college but don't have any children, this may not be the best solution for them.
I understand that this plan may be helpful for mothers trying to get back to work, but for me, I'm afraid it would only lead to a deterioration in the quality of jobs.
I doubt this plan would help me find a good job. The government needs to come up with something that is more sustainable.
Experts view the plan as a positive step toward compensating existing part-time workers that are paid less than their full-time counterparts. But they argue the government needs to do more to solidify the plan for a longer period of time, such as instituting punitive measures for when companies don't pay employees the amounts they promised. Kim Jong-un, ARIRANG News.
There's a currency out there that doesn't exist in any physical sense, but is worth about the same as an ounce of pure gold. Bitcoin, a virtual currency invented in 2009, is now the talk of the markets everywhere. But can it ever become a legitimate currency? Song Ji-son reports.
It's a virtual currency without a central bank or administration. No main servers are needed. All personal computers used in transactions become part of the network. Bitcoin is yielded when computers solve code-breaking problems, a process called mining. When that seems too difficult, you can buy them online. You can now trade Bitcoin in the Korean won too, through Korbit, Korea's Bitcoin exchange market, and buy goods with the virtual currency. At this bakery, you can pay with Bitcoin in the blink of an eye just by scanning the QR code with a smartphone application. The app converts the purchase value from won to Bitcoin, and the amount is sent to seller's electronic coin wallet. An average of 1 customer per day has paid with Bitcoin, since his shop started accepting it at the start of the month, but the owner is not considering cashing out his new Bitcoins anytime soon.
I think it will continue to rise as more people get to know it and become interested in it. I'm thinking of keeping all Bitcoins paid by my customers.
Many others agree, as Bitcoin is limited to 21 million units, and nearly half that amount has been issued so far. This means demand should far exceed supply. One Bitcoin is worth around $1,000, up 70-fold from last year. But wild fluctuations have cast a shadow over Bitcoin's stability as a currency.
Traditional currencies can be issued and are bound to inflation, but Bitcoin is bound to deflation as the money supply is limited. There's no doubt that Bitcoin is the most successful virtual currency to date, but its instability as a currency and the lack of intervention with this value will limit its usefulness in a wider sense.
While the Korean government has yet to announce its stance, Central Bank Governor Kim Jong-un said Thursday that it is questionable whether Bitcoin could develop into non-legal tender due to its high volatility and limited acceptability. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team. Now on Thursday, manager Hong Myung-bo returned to Korea from his visit to Brazil and held a short press conference. And when asked about the recent World Cup draw, manager Hong Myung-bo stated that he doesn't care who they're facing off against and will prepare the team like he would against any other team in the tournament. At the same time, he feels that the team is currently 70% ready for the World Cup and still needs a lot of work. Meanwhile, manager Hong added that he plans to add a foreign coach to the staff, but did not reveal who he has in mind just yet. And staying with football, but over on the women's side, where after much speculation, 22-year-old Ji So-yeon is close to a deal that will make her the first Korean female footballer to head over to England. The South Korean international, who currently plays over in Japan, will be signing with Chelsea Ladies FC, as sources say that the signing will come as early as at the end of the month, or, of course, early January. Now, nicknamed G Messi after Argentinian superstar Lionel Messi, she scored 26 goals in 55 international matches so far and helped Ina Kobe win back-to-back titles since joining the team. And shifting over to baseball, where Gwangju Dongsung High School faced off against Seongnam High School during the finals of the 2013 High School Alumni Tournament. And after cruising through 7-3, Gwangju Dongsung High takes the crown this year, with all the prize money being donated to all the schools. Of course, moving to some Thursday night's KBL action, Anyang KGC continues to struggle this season after losing to Jeonju KCC Aegis 71-64 to remain dead last in the league. Meanwhile, repeat of last year's championship matchup here, Seoul SK Knights taking on the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now going into the game here, first quarter of the game, a relatively low-scoring game from the start as Mobis takes a slim 15-13 lead before going into halftime with a 31-29 lead thanks to Moon Tae-young's 11 points in the first half. But in the second half of the game, SK rallies back to take a 2-point lead going into the fourth quarter before Courtney Sims and Park Sang-ho combining for 24 points in the fourth as SK dominates Mobis 75-60, your final score. And finishing things off with some Thursday night's V-League action, IBK Altos beat Hungok Insurance Life Pink Spiders 3-0 over on the women's side as they remain in first place. Meanwhile, a big matchup over on the men's side as Hyundai Capital Skywalkers took on the Korean Air Jumbos. Now going into the game here, first set, Liberman Algamet shaky with the serve received, but still manages to put up 8 points to help Hyundai Capital take the first set 25-20. Second set, Korean Air answers back with 25-22 set win to level the match 1-1. Liberman Algames continues to struggle defensively as he makes 13 errors on the night, but answers back with 33 attack points as Hyundai Capital takes the next two sets 25-21, 25-19 as they beat Korean Air 3-1. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And time now to check in on the weather conditions in Korea and around the world. And that's all for now. Have a fantastic rest of the day. We'll be back for our next newscast at noon, Korea time.